Hello guys and girls, and welcome to your next station. If you are watching this video, it means for one reason or another you have made the decision to rewrite the introduction paragraph that we worked on last week. We are going to get to that here in just a second, and we're going to walk through that process together. But before we do, we're going to take a look back at the passage that went along with that assignment. All I ask, guys, during this next part is that you are following along with me. Stay engaged. That means you should be following along. You should have your headphones on and you should be listening as we read this passage together. The passage that you were given last week with your introduction paragraph was titled Lower the Voting Age to 16 for Federal Elections. And here is what it had to say. In the 1960s, the country asked itself that if young men can die in Vietnam, then shouldn't they be trusted with the right to vote? Similarly, now we must ask ourselves that if 16 and 17-year-olds can contribute to society through work and face the criminal justice system as adults, isn't it only reasonable to allow them the right of self-determination through voting? In these teen years, many individuals begin to work and pay taxes. This is also when we grant the right to drive a car. On the flip side, about 250,000 youth are tried, sentenced, or incarcerated as adults every year across the U.S. When they're contributing to society or being held liable by society in these ways, they should also be able to weigh in on the future of our country and those responsible for the laws that affect them. That's why it was great to see freshman Representative Joe Nagise, a Democrat from Colorado, lead an effort that allows 16 and 17-year-olds to pre-register to vote ahead of their 18th birthday. This policy has already worked in many states. 14 states and Washington, D.C. already allow teenagers to pre-register to vote at 16, and 9 allow it for 17-year-olds. In California alone, since 2016, more than 200,000 teenagers pre-registered before their 18th birthdays. Congress only has the authority to lower the voting age for federal elections. That's what sparked the 26th Amendment, which in 1971 lowered the voting age in every election to 18. Freshman Representative Anya Presley, a Democrat from Massachusetts, proposed lowering the voting age from 18 to 16 for federal elections. The proposal failed with only 126 votes, but represented a turning point in the fight for enfranchisement. It had the support of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who has championed such efforts at the local level in California for years. Because voter turnout is habitual, it seems like a no-brainer to let people start voting at a younger age. If 16 and 17-year-olds can go to the polls with their parents or other adult figures, it could begin a lifetime of such civic engagement. Lowering the voting age is a worthy endeavor. Let's do it. What others are saying, teens are unreliable. Teens more often rely on the amygdala, the more emotional, primitive part of the brain. It isn't from gratuitous animus that car rental agencies make it difficult for young drivers to rent a vehicle, or that the Constitution establishes 25 as the minimum age to be a member of Congress. Of course, another reason that 16-year-olds are subject to so many restrictions that don't apply to grown-ups is that they don't know anything, or in any case, they don't know enough to be trusted to make sound decisions about liquor, firearms, joining the Marines, and governing the United States. The ignorance of teens is practically a cliche. Teens don't make bad choices any more than adults do. Cold cognitive abilities are those we use when we are in a calm situation, when we are by ourselves and have time to deliberate, when the most important skill is the ability to reason logically with facts. Voting is a good example of this sort of situation. Studies of cold cognition have shown that the skills necessary to make informed decisions are firmly in place by 16. By that age, adolescents can gather and process information, weigh pros and cons, reason logically with facts, and take time before making a decision. Teenagers may sometimes make bad choices, but statistically speaking, they do not make them any more often than adults do. Young voters can establish a pattern for a lifetime. In America, people start voting at 18. That's the year that they often move off to college. They either have to cast ballots in a community with which they're unfamiliar or pay attention to elections in a place where they no longer reside. That's a recipe for indifference. It would be much easier to encourage people to vote for the first time and to establish voting patterns for a lifetime when they're 16 and in high school. One objection is that young people will just vote like their parents, but researchers have found that people are always influenced by those close to them. People of all ages vote like their parents, or like their spouses, or like their neighbors. All right, we're going to switch over and take a look at the piece of paper that I've provided to you at this station. It says to read the prompt and the provided passage and then to write an introduction paragraph based on the prompt. Our prompt says, Congress is considering a bill that would lower the voting age in America from 18 years old to 16 years old. Those in favor of this bill argue that voting at an early age will establish a lifetime habit of voting, while those against believe teenagers are too emotional and can't be trusted to make decisions about our country. Your Kentucky representatives would like to know your opinion about this topic. Should the voting age be lowered to 16? Write an essay in which you state your opinion on this topic. Use evidence from the text to support your ideas. Remember last week we were talking about introduction paragraphs, and we talked about how introduction paragraphs always start with a hook. We went over 3 types of hooks last week. The first was a question. The second was a surprising fact, and the third was a short story, which we also call an anecdote. Remember when you were writing a hook is a great way to start is with a question. That is my personal favorite type of hook to use because I think it's the easiest. It gets your audience thinking about the topic that you're going to be writing about, but it doesn't put a lot of pressure on you to come up with some deep thought right at the beginning of your essay. So I've started a question for you. Should the voting age blank? And so we're going to think back to the text and back to what this passage was about. If we just go back and look at the title, it actually gives us a lot of information. Lowering the voting age to 16 for federal elections. So currently, based on what we read in the passage, the voting age is 18. You have to be 18 years old to vote. But we are specifically writing an introduction paragraph where we're trying to decide if we think that voting age should be lowered to 16 years old. And so a great way to start is with a question, asking our audience what they think about this topic. And we can do that by saying, should the voting age be lowered to 16 years old? If it were me, I would keep it really short and simple and start with that type of question. Now, you guys do have this paper in front of you, like I've already said, and so if I put something on my copy of the paper, you need to make sure that you put it on your copy of the paper as well. And since this is a video, if it takes you a second to get caught up with me, feel free to pause, write what you need to write, and then you can move on. After your hook, the next part of the introduction paragraph is the background information. And this is where most of the meat of your introduction paragraph is going to come from. Remember, our hook is going to be 1, possibly 2 sentences. Our thesis statement is certainly only going to be 1 sentence, but our background information is going to be 3 to 5 sentences. And we have some specific questions that we want to make sure we answer in this part of our introduction paragraph. Question number 1, we have to let our audience know what it is that people are upset about. So it says, members of Congress will soon vote on a bill that will blank. Now, when it comes to writing on demands, I think it's already difficult enough. And so my advice is always going to be to tell you to work smarter and not harder. If you can pull some key information out of the prompt, do it, right? So if we look at the prompt, the very first sentence says, Congress is considering a bill that would lower the voting age in America from 18 years old to 16 years old. And I'm actually going to highlight that, and you could possibly underline it on your copy of the text as well, because that's what we're going to be using to complete our next part of our introduction paragraph. So I'm literally going to take what it says here and I'm going to put it down here in my box. So members of Congress will soon vote on a bill that will lower the voting age in America from 18 years old to 16 years old. All right, so members of Congress will soon vote on a bill that will lower the voting age in America from 18 years old to 16 years old. We are not done with our background information yet because after we state what the debate is, our next sentence is going to tell how come some people are in favor of this. In other words, why do some people think it's a good idea to change the voting age from 18 to 16? Again, my advice: work smarter and not harder. So if we look back at the prompt, it actually gives us a reason right here. It says those in favor of the bill argue that voting at an early age will establish a lifetime habit of voting. So again, all I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it in my next box. Those in favor of this bill believe voting at an early age will establish a lifetime habit of voting. And again, guys, if I'm moving quicker than you're able to write, feel free to pause the video so that you can get caught up. So we have our hook: should the voting age be lowered to 16 years old? And then we have the beginning of our background information. Members of Congress will soon vote on a bill that will lower the voting age in America from 18 years old to 16 years old. Those in favor of this bill believe voting at an early age will establish a lifetime habit of voting. We're still not done with our background information. Now that we've told why some people think that lowering the voting age is a good idea, we're going to give the opposite side. Why do some people think it's not a good idea? And if we go back to the prompt, it actually gives us a reason. And remember, we are working smarter, not harder. It says, while those against believe teenagers are too emotional and can't be trusted to make decisions about our country. Again, guys, I'm going to take that and I'm going to use it as my next blank here. So those opposed argue teenagers are too emotional. And then I'm going to go back up so I don't mess this up. Teenagers are too emotional and can't be trusted to make decisions about our country. And can't be trusted to make decisions about our country. Okay, and I've got my period at the end there, and that actually completes my background information. So again, to recap, members of Congress will soon vote on a bill that will lower the voting age in America from 18 years old to 16 years old. Those in favor of this bill believe voting at an early age will establish a lifetime habit of voting. Those opposed argue teenagers are too emotional and can't be trusted to make decisions about our country. Last but not least is the thesis statement, and I'm actually not going to fill this in for you. We're just going to talk about it and you're going to have the chance to do it yourself. Remember, your thesis statement is where you get to choose your side. So you have a decision to make. If you think that the voting age should be lowered, you're going to circle the word should. If you think the voting age should not be lowered, you are going to circle should not. And remember, the key number to remember with thesis statements is 2. So after you circle should or should not by yourself, and this can come from your brain or it can come from the text, you need to give me 2 reasons. So in this first blank, you are going to give me your first reason for why you think the voting age should or should not be lowered to 16. And then in the second blank, you are going to give me your second reason. Once you have done that, you are done with your work at this station. Make sure you get it turned in to me before you rotate to your next spot.